Hey everyone, and welcome to this new video. In this video, I would like to talk with you about Zigbee and Home Assistant. So, what options are available and which ones I might have already introduced, which I can recommend, and much more. After the intro, let's get started. Have fun. I would like to begin my journey, as I did in my videos, with the $10 Amazon stick. I will link it for you below in the description. I believe it's the easiest and cheapest way to connect Zigbee with Home Assistant. The downside is that this stick is not very performant. This means that if you want to integrate more Zigbee devices in the future, for example, throughout your entire apartment, then it can be a bit overwhelming, which is why there is the Combi stick from a German company, which is much easier to integrate but a bit more expensive. I will also link it for you below in the description, and I will provide a setup guide for it as well. In principle, you can install decons through the supervisor, and then it should theoretically work. The downside of these USB sticks is that they are a little bit susceptible to interference. For example, if you have an SSD connected to your Raspberry Pi, it can lead to interference, causing Zigbee to not function properly, or the stick to not be recognized correctly, and so on. There are a few solutions for this as well. For example, you can connect a USB extension, but you need to find the right ones and so on. So the whole topic isn't quite so simple with these USB devices, and therefore one might naturally ask, why not just use an external Zigbee bridge? In the last video, I also happened to introduce one, as it was about the Home Assistant integration, which makes the whole thing relatively easy to implement. The link to it is again below in the description, as well as this Zigbee bridge here. The cool thing is, they can be connected via the network. So, connect everything via the network, register in the Tuya cloud, integrate into Home Assistant, and you're all set. From now on, you can use a lot of Zigbee devices with your home network. Connect to your Home Assistant and then integrate it into the Apple HomeKit app, for example. However, it must be mentioned that this has a small drawback, which is that you are running through the Tuya cloud. This means that if you don't have internet, you also don't have Zigbee, which is really unfortunate, and accordingly, it's not the best solution to use this. You can open it up and reflash it, but essentially, the only thing you can control is the Zigbee adapter, which you can then access via USB, and that doesn't really gain us anything. In that case, you might as well use the decon stick. Accordingly, for those of you who don't care about the cloud, this is the perfect solution. For everyone else, the decon stick. But the journey doesn't end there. I looked into whether there is another way for us to somehow get a Zigbee bridge that doesn't have the problems associated with the USB sticks. And there is also a solution for that, 2001, this time from a company that I am actually quite convinced of, namely Sonoff. They actually make some really cool products. Here you have the Sonoff Zigbee bridge, which is also quite relevant in size, as it is much smaller than the Tuya bridge, so it can be easily placed next to your Raspberry Pi. The advantage of this is that it uses a regular ESP. This means you can also start for about the price of a decon stick. The link is of course also below in the description. And to integrate everything into Home Assistant, you need to take a slightly different approach, namely to open it up, connect it with a flash adapter, and then install the open source software Tasmota on it. After that, you actually have full control over everything that runs through this adapter. You can turn it on via MQTT, and you can control it through Home Assistant. Your creativity knows virtually no bounds. The only thing you need to keep in mind is to flash the whole thing. And how it all works, I will show you now. First of all, we need to open it up. Inside, there is a circuit board, and we need to connect it to the flash adapter now. Here you can see the connections you need to make, meaning which pin you need to connect to which. Once you have completed everything, you need to download a software. I recommend doing this on Windows, as you can use the Tasmotizer, an open source software that you install after you have installed the driver for the USB adapter. Then you select the adapter, choose the Tasmota firmware, click on flash, and then basically it's all done. Now that you have Tasmota on it, you need to unplug the cable connection, reassemble everything into the housing, and connect it. The firmware will automatically create a Wi-Fi network that we can connect to, for example, with our mobile phone. A portal opens where we can enter our network data from our home network. The whole system restarts, connects to the home network, and the connection is complete. If we want to connect it to Home Assistant, we need to add our own configuration. You can simply copy this from the description, paste it into Tasmota, and finally, go to the Tasmota console and enter these two commands. And that's it. The whole thing can now be integrated into Home Assistant. In Home Assistant, go to Integrations, Add Integration, and enter Zigbee. Select the ZHA integration. Now enter the IP address of your Sonoff device in the network with the correct port, and then we can connect everything. So, that's it. Now we have everything integrated here. The question is, of course, Is this the perfect solution? And I would also say no to that. Not quite perfect, because we don't have any network adapters here, which means everything logically runs over Wi-Fi, and you obviously have to flash the whole thing. This means it's only for those who feel confident enough to tackle it. It's not particularly difficult, but it does take about a quarter of an hour to get everything done. Ultimately, I would say that there is still no perfect solution on the Zigbee market. There are already some approaches to make the whole process much easier. On one hand, there is of course Home Assistant itself, with Zigbee and Raspberry Pi and flash storage, or SSD, referred to as Home Assistant Amber. However, this is still in the crowdfunding phase, so it's not fully available yet. As for the Zigbee adapters, there are also some projects by people who have created their own circuit boards that are supposed to work with an ESP and LAN. However, since it involves custom circuit boards and DIY construction, the effort required is significantly greater. Moreover, the whole process is not readily available. This means that for people who want to get started now and don't want to wait 3 months for any part, the whole thing is not worth it. If you're interested in starting with Home Assistant and Zigbee again, you have the choice of a cheap $10 Zigbee adapter, which has limited capabilities, a decons adapter that has some interference issues but is super easy to set up and supports a lot of devices. The solution that is definitely the simplest for everyone, but only works through the cloud, which somewhat undermines the advantages of Home Assistant. And finally, the Sonoff variant, which requires a bit more effort for flashing and does not offer a LAN connection, thus depending on your Wi-Fi. So, I hope this video was insightful and could help you get started with Zigbee and Home Assistant. If you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please show it by giving it a rating. And I would say, see you again next week on Wednesday at time. Until then, take care and goodbye.